In some circles, he has a little bit of a bloodthirsty reputation, but I would want to put that in the context of him being a professional soldier, where once he took up arms and kind of segued from I'm a young man looking for my future in the West to being a soldier, he looked at the Indians as a formidable adversary and believed very strongly that there was nothing to do except meet strength with strength. And he therefore postured as a tough guy. But the reality was that these were all very tough people. And what goes around comes around on the frontier. And I don't think Clark certainly didn't engage in any type of atrocities or anything that was much different than Western warfare in general. What he believed was that the reputation, in the West, both the Europeans who had been, the carryovers from the French period and Indians didn't think so much of Americans. They thought of them as Virginians. They often referred to them as Virginians, and they often referred to them as the Long Knives. And their reputation was for fierceness, self-reliance, and much different than the French, who were there to trade and live amongst the Indians. So if you're saying what was the image of white people, the French image was much different than what we consider the American image. So as sort of the embodiment or representation of that, Clark used that as a way of, perhaps getting a little bit more mileage out of the force he had. He was dealing with only a couple hundred men under his command. And so if they wanted to think he was a fierce and bloodthirsty guy, he wasn't going to disavow him of that. But yet he was a reasonably educated man, and certainly not somebody who historians think of as being engaging in atrocities or being particularly bloodthirsty. Yeah, that happens in nature with animals doing that, and that happens in a lot of situations where people are attempting, if you have a reputation as a tough guy, that can only help you in the type of situation he was. But he was reasonably respectful of Indians, and he saw that they were not just the puppets of the British. He had had enough experience to know that. He knew that the combination of the British backing the Indians made it that much tougher for the Americans to prevail. And what was at stake? This was a do-or-die situation. In the East, perhaps losing, a failure of the rebellion would have been, some of the ringleaders would have been executed, but most people would have returned to their normal lives. The war in the West was much more of a winner-take-all. If the Americans were driven out of Kentucky, it might have been generations till they were able to return. And by the same token, for the Indians, every time they gave ground, however grudgingly, they knew it was unlikely they were going to regain that ground. So the stakes were, if anything, higher in the West than in the East. And so both sides treated it accordingly. And Clark was a young, strong, tough-minded guy, and the people with him were the same.